This time, I would like to just talk about Zen Master Hakuin's description about how wonderful Zazen is. And also he just wanted to recommend us to do Zazen. What's the reason why he just started Zazen? That he has a lot of trouble. And he wanted just to figure out what the trouble was. Then he starts practicing, and then eventually he just realized who he was. After his revelation, he found such a difference between what he think about himself and the truth. His true self is. That the difference is different between the heaven and the earth. That's the reason he just wanted to just describe this, and then those of us who just want to completely satisfy with presence ourselves and feel very easy. He wanted just recommend us to do Zazen. That's the reason why he just described this description. Then I would like to just mention about what he just describes that our true self is. It says, sentient beings are originally Buddhas. So we are originally Buddha itself. So we don't have any trouble. All the people say the kind of trouble people just have. It's very strange to say. So that's the reason he just mentioned about something like this. Although we are Buddha itself, but if someone just really realize we are just Buddha, we are already Buddha, we have to do Zazen, we have to practice Zazen. So, just like on water and ice, there is no ice apart from water. Exactly the water and the ice is the same substance. But water is very flexible. When you just pour the water in any container, it becomes exactly the container as it is. But the ice, when you put the ice in any container, but it is not much, quite much. It's always unstable and struggled a lot. That's much different, although the same substance. Why does it make this different? Is basically what just Master Hakuin mentioned about through this the sentence is our true self is exactly just like a water. Then our the true self is very flexible. Just like when you just face here and there, we just became what we just faced. This flexibility, any kind of thing. So as long as we just face any kind of things, we just become as it is, as they are. This flexibility. But why, although we are this much the flexible mind, but we have a kind of a trouble or the question or the problem. Why does it come from is a kind of the misunderstanding, who we are, our true self is. If person just realize the true ourselves, he or she doesn't have any the trouble or the conflict or the question, because our true self is that much flexible, so that once we just face this, we just become this one, no separation at all, so that. No separation is just that happened before the cognition. So before the cognition, what happened is no separation at all. So not as long as the things as the self never be separated. So it's not going to have any other question or trouble at all. But in that the situation that before the cognition that we are not separated separated from the things, but once we just recognize it, and then we just try to think about we just recognize, then you may know much about the recognition is. You see, if you just recognize this, but you never recognize this, because the thing, as far as recognition, the one or things being recognized and the person who just recognized, two things that happen, then we can just recognize those things. But only you just recognize this. You never just recognize this. But at the same time, you just recognize these things, the self. Then the things and the self is separate. Before you recognize the things, it's just exactly the same. No separation at all between the self and the things. These things, then what's happened is that you just recognize that the things and you just recognize the self. Before you just recognize the things, the self never exists, never just come up. Yeah, these things is very important things. But unfortunately, as long as the thinking or the thought, what's happened is you just recognize things, and then the cells just come out, and the UN, the things is separate. Two or three things just happen. This is not true, but before the cognition is exactly no separation at all. But before the cognition, you never these things never come up in your mind, because after the cognition, the things is just things, the things and the self is separated. Then you'll be able to just recognize. That's only that things just come up in your mind. But before recognition, the things never be separated, never just come up in your mind. This is a totally problem. But we have a kind of a friction, kind of a trouble. So the eyes. What just the the Master Hakuin just mentioned about ice is, as I told you before, that the things is exactly the same between the water and the ice. But when you just freeze, when you just freeze the water by your the way of thinking, your thinking. You just freeze yourself by your thinking. Then you just tie to yourself. Then you feel very uncomfortable. You're always very uncomfortable. Either you feel not so safe or you feel not at ease. But you just freeze yourself by the thinking or thought. So you just throw away. You just never just deal with the thinking or the thought coming up in your mind naturally, without any reason. So if you can do so, the things the ice will be able to be melt. The things you just tight is just untight. So this is the things what the Master Hakuin mentioned about. Just like water and ice, there is no ice apart from water. Exactly the same substance, so that you just simply do the zazen. What the zazen is the thinking or the thought coming up in your mind, just throw them away as they are. This is a zazen, so that it's the things you just tight by your thinking or the thought will be able to be untied. Then you will be completely free from everything. This is a zazen. That thing he just want to mention about, which just like water and ice, there is no ice apart from water. There are no Buddha but sentient being. You know, Buddha and sentient being is exactly the same. The person who just doesn't care much about the thinking or the thought coming up in your mind. So this is a Buddha. This is a Buddha. The person who just care much or deal with a kind of thinking or thought, it's he is or she is a sentient being. That's much different. No different at all. But the thing is, whether you just deal with the thinking or thought or not. That's it.